This is the Final Word Cricket Podcast, Season 19, Episode 12. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon with you. I'm up in sticky Brisbane, sun beating down just as you like it in Queensland. Jeff will be joining me tomorrow. We're a couple of days out from the second Ashes Test match at time of recording. We're going to do all of this for Morris Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. And boy, it feels like a long time since we were in Perth together. So much has played out. Although in other ways, not much at all. We've been waiting for the second test to start. What have we done between times? We have been on Media Street. We've been launching our book. We've been doing every interview that's going. We're looking at our book being sold in shops and people seeing it on shelves and all that type of thing, and feedback and reviews. And here we are. Hello, Jeff.
Hello. Nice to be back with you. It's been so long that it just sort of feels like, I don't know, I forgot about the Ashes for a while. I just didn't look at cricket for a weekend. We did a bunch of other things. We've wandered off, we've come back, and it's still here, and we're still waiting for the second test. So it's a strange start to a summer, given the whirlwind and then the calm.
Yeah, we're conditioned to back-to-back tests off the top, aren't we? That's the thing. We have the long build-up to a series, and we go bang, bang, but not the case this year. And I think that's fine. It's just that it's unusual and a bit uncomfortable that it's been so long to speculate about what's to come. We'll do plenty of that in a moment with our Ashes segment off the top. We've got a quite extraordinary result to reflect on, as well, as India was smashed in the second test match. Kohli's making tons again. The World Cup schedule's out for February. The England domestic schedule is released for next season, which is noteworthy. WBBL update that we'll do in the second half of the show. We've also got some tourism chat, Jeff, which you might explain off the top here, and then we'll get into things, and we'll be a bit self-indulgent about the book before we get right into the heart of the show.
Yes, Emma John will be joining the show because she's coming out soon. She's going to come out after the second test, which she realises may be a scheduling error on her part in terms of wanting to see England win. But, of course, she was part of our show during the previous Ashes in Australia with the poetic scripts that she was doing off the top to give you the sense of an England supporter watching from afar. But she will be out with us and doing a bunch of travel and checking in with us through the weekly show to tell us where she's going, what she's doing, and give people who are further afield a taste of what Australia can offer.
Outstanding. Yes, looking forward to that coming up in the middle of the program today. I said off the top that we've been ensconced on Media Street, Jeff. We did every podcast and every radio spot going for a couple of days there after getting back to Melbourne last week. That's fun. It's always kind of I reflect back to an earlier time in my life when the Treasurer would do the media rounds the day after the budget, where you would do everything that's going, and we were kind of in that space trying to sell books. Bedtime Tales for Cricket Tragics, which got our first review. It was delightful. And the launch, as we mentioned, we were queuing up. Yeah, it's okay. You didn't need to necessarily know. It's fine. I keep on top of these things. Since we've had the Storytime app that we recorded before the launch, we've had the Paul Marsh interview, so we haven't really had a chance to reflect on what a lovely night the launch was, Jeff, there at the Commercial Club with Paddy, who has been there forever, and he's finishing up this year, and we thought what better place to celebrate the book than there. And then William McInnes was just everything you'd want him to be. Long-term listeners to the show will remember a 2-hour interview that we did with William during the first bit of the pandemic. And I think he's the kind of guy who, no matter where the conversation goes, he is bright enough and sharp enough and experienced enough and worldly enough that he can find an angle to go with and find some way of making it relatable. And having him up on stage with us again was a real joy.
Yeah, but he just has such a remarkable back catalogue of, there's a story for every occasion, and his recall's extraordinary. He's got that sort of Ian Chappell detail, but it goes where you don't expect. We're having a chat before the show in the garden, and he ends up ending up on a story about Mel Gibson's dad trying to beat him up in a health food shop in Queensland because he interfered with Mr. Gibson's purchase of a bag of wheat germ. Like, you have no idea where the story's going to end up, but they're always entertaining. So yeah, it was lovely that he made the effort to come and join us and be part of what we were doing on the basis of having enjoyed a conversation a few years ago, and sort of kept an ear on what we were doing since, and having released a book himself recently, which is called It's a Scorcher, which is about summer in Australia. So there was a lot of cricket crossover, but he was also very self-effacing about it. He said, "Oh, don't bother spending too much time on that." But I think it's worth mentioning that one's out there as well.
Absolutely, and a nod to our pals at Morris Blackburn Lawyers as well. They kind of put on a more intimate book launch for me the following day, which was a client lunch where everyone went home with a book, which was a really nice way to engage with our principal partner on the show, where we could tell a few of the tales that we've done in our various launches and interviews and that type of thing. So people there who'd listened to the show lots and others who haven't, but it was a great way to spend an afternoon there at the Celtic Club in Melbourne. And more about Morris Blackburn in the middle of the show. Right, Jeff, let's tear into things here. Ashes news. There is a lot of Ashes news. I think we'll use the same format that we used last week, where we will just rattle through news line by news line and see where we end up. Starting with, why don't we begin with the pitch? Just because why not? It's backward looking, but the very good rating from Perth. CA put a press release out, which it felt like the audience was really aimed at the criticism coming from India about the pitch finishing in 2 days. Although in saying that, Usman Khawaja responded to CA's release, and I guess more widely the ICC verdict on it, giving it the highest rating by saying it was a piece of shit. And Khawaja and CA are set to exchange words over his public comments on Friday. So I don't think this was very well timed by Khawaja. Like his head's above the parapet consistently. Didn't strike me as the right time for him to have a swing at something when the consensus was so far the other way. I get that he's entitled to have an opinion. He's absolutely entitled to his opinion, but from an optics PR perspective, I don't know, he might have left that one alone.
It's not like he came out and wrote a piece for news.com.au saying that it was comments made at an event to do with his foundation. But if you're speaking publicly during the Ashes and you're an Ashes player, you're going to get quoted. Like
my word,
he's experienced enough and smart enough to know that, right? So either it was very deliberate or it was an incredible blunder. I don't know which is worse almost, but it seems like it just looks so bad that he's struggled on that surface the last 2 years, and it's been difficult to bat on day one, and lots of wickets have fallen on day one the last couple of years. But to be the opener whose job it is to counter tough conditions, even though he didn't open in that first innings, came in at 4, but he played like an opener and looked as out of sorts, it makes it look like he's being way too defensive by looking to blame the surface when the rating was reasonable. He's talking about the bounce being crazy and some jump up too high and some stay low. And well, look, he knows more than me. He was out there batting on it, but it didn't look that way. Observing it, it didn't look like players were struggling with inconsistent bounce. They were struggling with steepness of bounce, and that's certainly what he struggled with when he gloved one through. But it's what's the thing that's kind of sour grapes, but something else. He's the workman blaming his tools, particularly if the match ref's rating is that the pitch was consistent.
Yeah, and there's some CricViz data which Dan Cherney published yesterday that it was consistent bounce. It was a cute bounce, but it was consistent the whole way through. So, that was kind of what took us into the weekend. Then Travis Head was asked about the opening position, as you'd expect. He's done lots of media, but he did a press conference and said he's happy to keep doing it. But look, that's obviously been reported as like Head putting his hand up to open again. But there is the big caveat that he is going out of his way to talk about what a great job Usman Khawaja's done in the role over time. Like, he's going out of his way to talk up Khawaja's credentials to continue doing it. So I don't think it's as straightforward as Head looking for the job himself. He acknowledges the sensitivity as well, as you would, because obviously there are sensitivities involved here. These two have played a lot of Test cricket together. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. Wouldn't have been outside the realms of possibility that Khawaja and Head could have opened together last summer before Cameron Green was ruled out. Let's not forget, before Cameron Green was ruled out of last summer with his back injury, which ended up having surgery on it, it was going to be Head and Khawaja. I mean, without going too far behind the curtain, I was doing a thing with Head, and I was told quite expressly that I weren't to ask him about opening the batting, right? Because it was such a hot topic at the time, and they were trying to the best of their ability, control the news lines around this. He was going to open in the Sheffield Shield. He was essentially going to replace Warner as Khawaja's opening batter. So there is a world where these two could have done it together. It's just that as it stands right now, there's no way in the world they're dropping Weatherald after one Test match. So it means that it is a bit of a shootout between Khawaja and Head. And there's the day-night element. There's the fact that Head's got a great record against the pink ball, 3 Test hundreds, one last year, a brilliant one when he totally punished India when the ball went soft. So Khawaja was contributing to the hard work being done that week in Adelaide. Let's not forget that Khawaja batted for like 20 overs on that first night when it was really difficult. And Head was able to prosper when the ball got soft. And that's a component to the pink ball test cricket that we've seen over the years. It's not just when the ball's going around corners at night. There's another portion of play where batters like Travis Head can totally capitalise.
Yeah. Yeah, and when sometimes even the evening session isn't difficult to bat. There is a generalisations that are made. We've seen teams score plenty of runs in the evening at times if the ball's not in the right state to be dangerous and that kind of thing. But it's interesting that Travis Head is saying that it should be Adelaide all the time, the day-night test, which sort of puts him at odds with many in the Saka who don't want it to be the day-night test every time. They're looking forward to having their day test this year during the Ashes.
I love this, that Head said that he lobbied Premier Malinauskas himself on the matter, which is very Travis Head to go up to the Premier and say what he wants. Why wouldn't he? I saw Mally do a selfie video the other day with the Adelaide pitch behind him, and he's like, to the effect of telling the curators to make sure it's a road, so it's a 5-day pitch, which I thought was quite funny that the Premier, in a jocular way, I don't want to say this was serious, it wasn't, dictating terms to the curation staff in the middle of Adelaide Oval, that it be a pitch that lasts for 5 days when the caravan moves up there next week. But no, Travis Head, it does. There is this debate about day-night test cricket and the Ashes. Joe Root lent into it a little bit when he did his presser. Felt a little bit sorry for Root and the way it's been reported and depicted that he's making excuses for England against the pink ball. I didn't hear it that way at all. He was simply saying that, they've prepared for the pink ball test. They understand why there's a lot of popularity for pink ball cricket over here. He gets why they were always having one here, no dramas whatsoever, but also saying that in his opinion, the Ashes don't require a pink ball test match given the size of the event. And that's that's true, right? Like if this test match were being played by day, it would still have exactly the same levels of public interest. The only metric that changes, I think, I might be wrong, but I think because the same attendance would be here at the Gabba, is how many people can watch it after 6 p.m. on the eastern seaboard. And that's not nothing. I don't want to turn that into an irrelevant fact. If millions more watch it, if that's what it turns out to be, that is a factor. But Root's right from a cricket perspective, ball versus bat, that this Ashes series is already built up as big as any in modern memory. It didn't, strictly speaking, need a pink ball test match. So I thought that the way it was then reported that Root's running scared against the pink ball was a snifter unfair.
Yeah, the in terms of TV audiences, I don't know. I mean, the interest is there, even if it's on during the day and it's wrapping up at around 6 o'clock or whatever it might be. It's still the experience of Ashes series past. Everybody's still tuning in to find out what happened. They're still locked on to the series as a whole. I guess it's just how many minutes they're staring at on the screen and whether the TV broadcasters are happy with that. So I think it's very much a broadcaster push rather than one that CA would need in order to feel like more people are engaged with the series, because they would be engaged either way. One of the things about Test cricket that really works is that people are interested in tuning in to find out what's happened while they haven't been watching. It has that sort of hook as well, which can be one of the things that makes it compelling.
Yeah. I can see a world where into the future, like a little bit into the future, the first 3 are day-night. So I mean by that, Perth to be a day test, but into the day-night cycle. Brisbane to be day-night and Adelaide to be day-night as well. I can see a world where the only day tests that we have left are Melbourne and Sydney, because, of course, they're played at times of the year when people aren't at work. So, I mean, I wouldn't like that. There have been 25 day-night test matches. All of them have had a result, which is fine, but most of them have finished on days 3 or 4. The pink ball things with England as well. I had a look at the numbers last night. They've played the second most day-night tests for what it's worth. They've played 7. Australia have played 14 and won all but 1, but England haven't got a good record with the pink ball. They've won 2 of their 7 so far. But
they've largely played 7 because they've toured Australia where they've had to play them.
Yeah, and they played 2 last series, and the 5th test in that series, which has been well remarked upon by now, they were completely cooked. And that was shown in the way they played that week. That week, they did have one silver lining. It was Mark Wood taking 6 for. He's not going to be playing this week at Brisbane with the pink ball, though. He's got a knee injury, the same one that had surgery on it earlier this year. They say precaution. Potato with this kind of thing sometimes. Is it precaution? Is it something more? Time will tell, but it's,
if it's precaution,
noteworthy.
Why are you resting a guy who bowled 11 overs 10 days ago? Is that...
Well, aggravated. The idea is the 11 overs aggravated something in his knee, is the point. So they want to make sure that they've got him for the day test match at Adelaide next week, but I suppose time will tell. I wonder what England will do, though, because logically Josh Tongue would come in, right? But do you think Will Jacks will? I sort of think Will Jacks will play. I don't know why. I just can't shake this feeling that they'll be very mindful about extending their batting. And Australia are in a similar boat, right, as it relates to what they do with Lyon. Adam White made a compelling case for Michael Nisa to also play instead of Doggett because of what Nisa brings with the pink ball. He's played 2 test matches with it, home test in good nick, and got multiple first-class hundreds, whereas Doggett averages 9 in first-class cricket with the bat. So he does present another bowling all-rounder, if you like, option where you don't detract at all with the ball. And then Webster, in that scenario, would be at 8. Nisa would be at 9. Lyon wouldn't be there. I mean, you don't pick a test 11 for batting depth. You don't do it. I mean, that's the old Jackson Bird not playing a test match because he wasn't as good at number 11 or whatever it was years ago. We used to joke a lot about that a decade ago. But still, I do see the logic in a test played at fast pace. If it's breakneck speed kind of Brisbane, and it could be, pink ball, under lights, there are reasons why this could be rapid. I know the weather's settled down here, but there was a lot of weather around here last week, the extent to which that's affected the curation of the test pitch, where they kind of go, right, well, Lions unlikely to have a massive say in the match. It's more likely that batting depth will be a factor, and they play the utility instead.
Yeah, we may well have the England team by the time this pod goes out. Ali Martin was telling me he reckons Jacks is playing based on watching them at training and sussing out who's talking to who and that sort of thing. So that might be the option if they want that extra bit of batting power. And Mark Wood misses out, so it will probably be a decision about whether it's Josh Tongue playing all pace or whether Will Jacks comes in to give him something else. But I think we've gone over before my thoughts about Lyon playing, which is that he should play. He should, any time he's around, he should have a spinner available, and why not? But yeah, the Michael Nisa one is interesting. That's the most interesting. There's a reluctance with this current setup, selector-wise, to drop players where they think it might seem unfair. So I imagine they would read it as unfair to drop Doggett because he took wickets, but it might be the best selection move if you could strengthen that batting. But there we are. Ben Stokes has been doing a bunch of media, which is interesting this far out from a test match. It sort of seems evident that they realised there was some image management that needed to be done. So out there saying things like they don't want to be perceived as arrogant, and backtracking on the line about has-beens and saying that was an accident and he didn't mean to say that and he meant to say something else. And, anybody reasonable and fair-minded could see that he didn't mean to say that. There's some level of damage control being done, which isn't always what we expect from this side.
Yeah, I sort of took that as I expected, really. There's not a great willingness to take on board external feedback anyway. So that was a nice deflection from Stokes to clear the air with the press pack when they all, all got back together at the Gabba, acknowledging they added, I think, a day on to training to give themselves an extra bit of cricket in the absence of having not played in Canberra in the PM's 11. And look, at the end of the day, the PM's 11 game was compromised by the optics at the end with Sam Constas bowling. But, what about before then, right? Like, that was a proper game of cricket to that point. Bethel missed out. James Rew, 92 not out. I bet you he plays in this series. Campbell Kellaway could leapfrog everyone from an Australian perspective. I heard Chris Rogers talking with Adam White yesterday about how ready he feels already for test level, which is a pretty good guide with Chris Rogers, who's done this job before. He certainly looks the part. The quirky bit of all of this was that, one of the points I was making around the PM's 11 is that, it's sniff to disrespectful that the Prime Minister has a game of cricket, puts it on. It's been going on for more than half a century, only to kind of send the seconds. Well, as it turns out, Albo also sent his deputy, Richard Miles, who went along on day 2 to receive the England team because Albo was busy getting married up the road at the lodge. So congrats to Albo. But yes, he wasn't there on day 1 of the PM's 11 because he had a very good excuse. I'm not sure how far out they planned the wedding as it related to the cricket, but one of these things that you can't begrudge. So my point around it being a little bit disrespectful in the context of a fixture that's been around for a long time, maybe that wasn't as founded in reality as we thought it might have been.
Was the wedding scheduled first? Because we probably had the PM's 11 dates 9 months out. I suppose you usually have a wedding set longer than that. There's probably a longer runway than that for most people. I know they couldn't have because he got re-elected in May. So he couldn't have known that he'd have a lodge at his disposal. Yeah. Well, they might have known that.
It was only a wedding of 80 people.
Not known where,
Yeah, maybe. There was 80 people there, and a lot of them are ministerial colleagues. So, I think that this probably was added after he knew about the PM's 11, and fair enough. One more thing out of the PM's game is that Peter Siddle, I can report, has our merch, has the hat-trick T-shirt from the Gabba 15 years ago. I sent Louise Crossman, who's a patron of ours and a friend as well. She grabbed a T-shirt from me in Melbourne and took it to Canberra and gave it to Peter Siddle at Manuka Oval. So looking forward to seeing Sids wearing the Cook, Pryor, Broad and Siddle T-shirt at some stage. And you can wear it too, for it has been very popular, lots of sales. What else would you want to wear to the Gabba this week, or any other test match around the country for that matter, than the Peter Siddle hat-trick T-shirt, brilliantly designed by League Tees in that old Beatles design from many decades ago. Get yourself one. Love the work that League Tees do more generally, but thrilled to be working with them with stuff like this again.
Yes, it's all out there, and the Gabba is the place, obviously. That's where the hat-trick happened, so hope to see a bunch of people rocking it, whether it's the green with gold or the gold with green or the white with black or the black with white. You've got options depending on your look. Let's race through a bit of Shield before the break, Adam, because they've had this long stretch of Sheffield Shield games. The most recent couple of rounds were going to be during that period of the first couple of tests, so that they'd have a line on form and so on if you had players who needed replacing, I suppose. And it's situated, interestingly, Victoria at the top of the table with Queensland just under them at the moment, and a fair bit going on.
Yeah, I mean, Victoria lost that game to Queensland. That was the top of the table clash. Strong win for Queensland at Brisbane. Tassie had a huge away win over New South Wales, and South Australia and West Australia drew. So, yeah, the games that are coming up this week, so beginning actually during the test match, a bit of a throwback where there's a Shield round running alongside a test, which reminds me of my childhood going around the grounds on the radio and that type of thing. So, Victoria, WA, so that's a great chance for the Vics to cement top spot, per what Chris Rogers was saying. It's his old state, WA, who are at the bottom of the table, interestingly. They'll have the chance to motor through, though, because there are 4 teams within 4 points up to third. So Victoria play WA. There is New South Wales hosting Queensland, so New South Wales a chance to leapfrog a couple there as well. And South Australia are hosting Tasmania, they're 4th and 3rd respectively at the moment. So last of the run, the 6th of the run, then we have the Big Bash break and then a month of Shield cricket after the Big Bash to round out the season. And it's been a great season, I think, so far with the exception of Victoria. It's grouped together quite neatly. Not a lot of draws, and it has to an extent provided a platform. All you really want at the start of a Shield season is it provides the platform for cricketers to get themselves in the test team. Weatherald and Doggett have achieved that. Neesa's got himself back on the radar. And someone like Renshaw is now pushing incredibly for selection. And Labuschagne has done all he needed to do to get back into the team. So, and also it did warm up, players in other ways, like Steve Smith made 100 in the one game he played. Mitchell Starc took wickets in the one game he played before the first test match. So the Shield's providing or doing its bit, both at the top of the pyramid and as players are coming through as well. One more thing on Australia before we go to the break, Jeff. They are going to Zimbabwe next year. Now, we advanced this last week on the program that Australia might go to Zimbabwe when they're in Africa next year. Well, they're going to go, but for one-dayers in Zimbabwe before their limited overs commitments in South Africa. And as I understand it, that'll both be before the test matches, which will come next. So they'll go Zimbabwe one-dayers, South Africa white ball, then it'll be the 3 test matches in South Africa. That'll be a quiet night in the library, I'm sure, watching those 3 tests over there after what happened the last time that Australia visited in 2018. So I would like Australia to play a test match there. Of course I would, but one day is better than nothing there at the Harare Sports Club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to this more than I've looked forward to just most cricket things I can think of for so long. Just given the previous attempt to go back, ended up foundering during COVID and had to be called off. It's been so long since, from 2018 to 2026, it's a long span to not have gone to, the third nation to play Test cricket. They're one of the most storied and historical opponents. They're the team that came to Australia and figured out how to win this millennium and knocked Australia off multiple tours running. There's so much going on there, even before you get to Sandpaper and 2018 and the last World Cup, the semi-final there, on and on it goes. So, yeah, to get back there is awesome, but I think we're going to have to go to Zimbabwe first as well. Don't want to miss out on that bit.
Yeah, I'm going to struggle because that's going to clash with the pointy end of the footy finals. And, I wouldn't want to be one of those Hawthorn supporters, but surely I'll be in Melbourne then. Surely I'll need to be in Melbourne next year. We'll see. The test matches mercifully start after the grand final. Yeah, you're allowed to sometimes. I think when you've got a young team playing as excitingly, is that even a word, as we are, You're allowed to get a wee bit ahead of yourself. We'll get ahead of ourselves in a moment and move into touring Australia. Before we do that, a word for our principal partners on the show, Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. They're Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. They do all sorts. We've talked a lot about super insurance. We were doing quite a bit of that on Friday, actually. But they do, take, for example, their client Matthew, whose workplace produced mining equipment. Some of the biggest objects they worked with were lips, the jagged plates used on the digging ends of excavators and loaders. Working in a hot, dirty environment and having to move up to 100 kilograms of equipment by hand, Matthew had repeatedly warned the employer that this procedure was dangerous. One day, Matthew twisted, and at that moment, he felt something change. That's when I felt my knee go, he says. He torn his meniscus. That's a crucial bit of cartilage in the knee, which, again, we know a lot about from footy. A lot of players who do their meniscus. Well, Matthew experienced excruciating pain.
In the cricket game we played a couple of months ago.
Oh, yeah. When you were in strife. Well, Matthew describes here the excruciating pain he was in to the point where he was unable to work, facing then months of surgery, rehabilitation, and emotional strain, not just for him, but of course for his loved ones as well. His union referred him to Shane at Maurice Blackburn. Shane knew what he was doing, Matthew says here, and he was always kept up to date with what was going on. Despite their negligence, Matthew's employers fought the claim, attempting to shift the blame onto him. However, with compassionate and skillful legal representation, Matthew was able to win compensation and prepare for his next stage in life. So, showing the breadth of the work that Maurice Blackburn do. They've been around since 1919, some of the best lawyers in Australia. Sure, 30 locations around the country if you want to give them a buzz, but also the ability to talk to them online immediately. They're great people. They are there on behalf of working people. And Jeff, we're always proud of our association with them and great to have them as our principal partner.
We are, and we will continue to be as we go on through the summer. We'll be back in a moment. This is The Final Word. It's season 19. It's episode 12. And we're very happy to see joining us today. It's Emma John, who was part of our show in 2021-22. We're doing some work with Tourism Australia and with Emma to hear about her trip around Australia, which is coming up over the next few weeks. One of the things that they say is that Australia is about being warm and welcoming and experiencing genuine connections, and that is what we plan to do on this show because we'll be warm and welcoming to you. But you haven't left yet, Emma. You're in this position where England's been blown up in the first test. You've arranged to come out after the second test, by which stage it might be 2-0 down. I wonder if this is a tactical oversight to begin with, but you're going to come and have a much more enjoyable time than just going to cricket because you've got a whole lot of other things lined up, first of all.
I mean, yeah, that's the deal, right? When you're an England fan going to an Ashes series, the deal is that you just plan lots of great fun trips to do. I mean, you'd be mad not to. You're traveling to literally the other side of the world, even though there are these fantastic, shorter form. It's like a short form format. As cricket has got shorter, so the flights have got shorter. And I've got family in Perth, and there's this amazing flight now that goes direct London to Perth, and you don't even have to stop anywhere. Of course, you're going to make the most of it. I mean, I've been coming on trips to Australia all my life, because I am lucky enough to have some Australian family. I learned how to do this from a very early age. Mm-hmm. Apparently, my first trip to Australia was when I was 1 year old. I do not remember it. I was a flower girl at my grandma's second wedding, and there are pictures of this. So I've kind of, I've kind of worked it out, and I've worked out that you come over and you do as much as you can. You make the most of it.
It's like that royal visit that Prince William came on when he was 1 year old. You and he. I mean, I've never compared you to royalty before. Maybe your final word royalty for the work you did with us 4 years ago.
I'll practice my wave. I'll practice my nice little royal wave. I always get treated like royalty. How's that? Like, it's funny, isn't it? Because the Ashes series has this whole thing around it. Like, it's the most difficult thing for an England player to do. It's the ultimate test, and get such a barrage as a player of all this kind of like media. And that's what they say about going to play in Australia. Oh, it's really hard. Like, the crowds are really against you. Go as a fan. everyone is pretty delightful to you all the time and very excited to show you their country.
That's what I've found as well going the other way. Some of the friendliest times I've had in England have been sitting in the Hollies stand. People are happy to have you there. And I think for the most part, it goes the other way as well. But we're figuring out logistics. It is, you talk about it being a long trip. We know it's a long trip because we have to be the ones to leave Australia all the time. But there are a lot of people who haven't done it, haven't made those trips. And I think broadly, this is interesting for people. If you're from Australia, you want to know what it's like for people from outside. And if you're someone who hasn't been to Australia, you want to know about getting there. I mean, you talked about the London-Perth flight, which I think all of us have taken a couple of times, which is great because the stopovers are the thing I like the least. But that's one of the options. It's not going to get you to the East Coast. Talk people through it. If someone's like nervous, they're unsure, they don't know, they're like, God, that seems too far away, too intimidating, too scared to do it. What's the process? Tell us how it's done.
If you're coming over from the UK, unless you're lucky enough to go on one of these directs, you generally stop over in either somewhere like Dubai. That's a really nice place to stop over because the two halves of the flight are roughly the same. I've quite often done the flight that comes into Darwin because that's where my grandparents are, and so then I've done a lot of stopping over in Hong Kong, and had the odd night in Hong Kong. That's a lovely way to break it up. Kuala Lumpur, done that, and Singapore. I mean, the thing is, again, it's a bit like those when the England teams used to come out for the Ashes on the boat. Didn't they always stop in Sri Lanka or Ceylon, as it was called at the time? You read about those trips, and they would be so excited, even though they were only going to be in Ceylon for like a day. They were just going to get off the ship, play a match, and then get straight back on the ship. And I think honestly, you get the same feeling about these little stops that you do when you come over, whether it's Singapore or Hong Kong or wherever.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've done every combination, Jeff. I've done every in between bit, and there's no perfect one. It's just an experience each time when breaking up the trip or going directly. There will be a time when there's the direct flight to the eastern seaboard of Australia, and that will be a great time as well. I'm less concerned about the stopping these days. I just want to get there as quickly as possible. And a lot of the airlines will provide you that option. Like there's the more relaxed option where you have the stopover, or there's the how can I make it from London to Sydney in like 22 hours with a stopover with 40 minutes in between. You can do that as well. You can tailor your trip to what suits you best when coming to Australia.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're really good at combining the connections. On my flight home on this trip, I've got like I think it's like a 1 hour or 1.5 hour connection at Hong Kong. And I remember saying, "Oh, is that long enough?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, because these flights connect. The next one isn't taking off without you," kind of thing.
Yeah, and you get the possibility of, I've taken advantage of that a few times. I've never been to this country before. I'm going to delay my connection by 24 hours and go and spend a night in wherever it is in Manila or Bangkok or something, on the way, just to go and have a look around. But tell us about once you get here, what's on the initial agenda? What's the image on starter pack?
Oh my goodness, I love a city. Obviously, I'm a city girl. I'm from London, and I like to get my feet under me and burn off the jet lag in a city, because I very much enjoy Melbourne for the reasons that so many people say about why the Brits love Melbourne, because especially if you're a Londoner, there's something very familiar about it. It's actually like a more manageable London. You've got all the cool stuff, but you've got it kind of like all a little bit closer together and a bit more walkable. So I quite like bedding myself in with like a little trip to a museum or something, because I can have a little look around this museum, and then if I need to go back and have another little nap, then my hotel's not too far away. But I have to say, overall, you could argue that I've been almost solo traveling to Australia since I was about 12, because that was the first time that my parents put me and my sister on a plane as unaccompanied minors. I don't know if that's what they still call it, but we were sent off to visit our grandparents. I'm quite happy with the old solo travel, and I just love a road trip. Being to a beach is one of the first things anyone's going to do when they, in the first probably 24 hours, especially when you're from a country like Britain where the beaches are not normally warm, sandy, pleasant,
free of contaminants.
Yeah, pleasant warm water to swim in. I mean, that's a good point. But I have an absolute yen for kind of like either getting on the road and going coastal, or also I'm a big fan of turning inland and going and exploring. I think some of the most joyous memories I have of my road trips are of starting in Adelaide, say, and then driving up to the Flinders Ranges, but then all the way along you're stopping at these little country towns that are they're really recognizable communities, and you stop off and there's the butcher and there's the little community hall that might be doing some, I don't know, amateur dramatics, and it's just not an Australia that I think people think about necessarily when they're planning their trip. One of the biggest things I think that people should think about when they're planning trips is like, you actually really don't need to plan around the beaches, because there are so many great beaches. You are going to be tripping over beaches wherever you go. They have to like update the list of best beaches every year just to share it around. Even from 2025, I've been to a couple of the best beaches on the 2025 best beaches list. I think this year the top one was Bay of Fires in Tasmania, which is, the one with the sort of very dramatic red lichen on the rocks. And they've also, I was really proud to see that Scarborough Beach in Western Australia has made it onto the list of best beaches, which is like, to me, that's like a neighbourhood beach, because my uncle and his family live in Stirling, which is a little suburb in Perth, and Scarborough is the little beach that we go to. I felt sort of weird, sort of like, vicarious pride to see it on there. So I think, look at what are the other things about Australia that you're not going to see anywhere else. And believe me, there's, plenty of them.
Speaking of things that people can't access anywhere else, connecting with, learning about Indigenous culture in Australia, this is a huge one for visitors, and I think something that so many Australians feel really proud of, the fact that there is so much to learn in our country. How do you go about finding out about that as an outsider?
I mean, it's genuinely pretty much the best thing you can do. It's such an important part of the travel experience, whether it's like a walking tour, or sometimes these are kind of much longer tours. Like I've been on the Wookalina Walk in Tasmania, where you go walking with an Indigenous guide, but for 3 days, and you get to access all these kind of remote locations and sometimes sacred sites that you just wouldn't get to go to. Or you can like show up at Elizabeth Quay in Perth and you can get this wonderful Noongar guide, Walter Maguire, to like walk you around for 45 minutes. So there's lots of different options. I'm pretty sure that the Tourism Australia website has a whole page devoted to this, and like you can search and you can find it. But the actual numbers, I looked this up, and like the numbers of how touring experiences led by Indigenous guides, it has increased so much in the last like 2 decades that it's just been a real boom. It's just like a real privilege to get to learn about one of the oldest living cultures on the planet, right? I mean, where else do you get that?
They say that Australia brings memories that last a lifetime. You don't actually have to be Emma and be coming here all through your life for that to be the case. But you will be coming here. You'll be arriving with us after the Brisbane Test. So we'll look forward to checking back in with you through the summer to find out where you're going, what you're doing, and how you're feeling when you check the cricket scores in between all the other travel that is going on. Thanks, Emma, for joining us.
Right, great to catch up with Emma, and looking forward to that through the series. Back to the cricket. Boy, oh boy, India, their biggest ever defeat by runs. 408 runs was the margin in the second test match. They have been annihilated by South Africa. Another sweep on home soil, clean sweep last year against New Zealand. Another one here. It really complicates their World Test Championship qualification run as well, owing to the fact that we know how important it is to win your tests at home. And look, South Africa, from their perspective, what a remarkable achievement. We spoke a little bit about it last week, but to go to India and to do something like this, I reckon we're going to have more Dan Gallen tears on the final word soon enough when they make the final again at Lords. It could be Australia and South Africa two times in a row. Wouldn't that be something?
Well, they've set themselves up so well, like to maximise away points in India. Crazy. Obviously, New Zealand had that sweep of India not that long ago either, so it's a curious setup to be in. Australia don't get there until 2027, and they so desperately want to win in India, and it's always felt borderline impossible when Australian teams go there. But these other sides have been able to do it. An extraordinary flex the way that South Africa just you talk about grinding them into the dirt. I mean, that was one of the supreme examples of it.
So big part of this story is Simon Harmer and what he's been able to achieve. I think that Simon Harmer's life will make a great book at some point, his life in cricket. To be a match winner here, but to have returned to Test cricket, having played as a youngster, his years away as a Colpack, as a county club captain, the success he's enjoyed with Essex, it's a remarkable journey, and let's hope it continues for a time yet. One more stat that I picked up off CricBuzz here was that India have lost 5 of their last 7 home Test matches. Their previous 5 home defeats spanned 13 years. So it gives you a sense of just how this is changing. And we joked last week about the improbability of Gautam Gambhir getting sacked. I don't know. Time will tell. But it does rather focus the mind. If they were to miss the World Test final for a second time in a row, and that's the challenge here, right? Where now they're going to have to, I'm not sure what percentage of games they'll need to win from here, but it isn't just drawing them. It's losing 2-0 is a massive problem. We know that from other teams. It was the reason why India didn't make it through last time. It was one series defeat against New Zealand ruined everything for them. So that will be one to watch. South Africa remain there, by the way. They've got about 50 bloody white ball games that follow. The sadness of that being a 2-test series, maybe we go to that first, actually. 2-test series here. Now, this is the other side of the coin of the bigger World Test Championship that was being talked about last week. Great mate Will McPherson in the Telegraph reporting during the week that the trade-off's going to be more teams in the WTC, but a minimum of 1 test to constitute a series. Now, this is in line with what we've seen in the WCA report, which we spoke a little bit about with Paul Marsh the other day. Well, yes, true, but you know what I mean. Like 1 test will be enough to govern a series. So that will make it, the argument is it'll make it more financially viable for countries with less money to host. And I suppose there's some truth to that, but it'll completely mess with the integrity of the competition as well. So I really hope that as they make their way through to 2027, that, someone speaks to someone about the integrity of it, because it's already compromised to a certain extent with the teams you don't play. If you add to that pool of teams and you throw in 1 test series, which is ridiculous because obviously that doesn't constitute a series, it constitutes a one-off match. It'll provide the ammunition for more people to undermine it in different ways, and it'll undo a lot of the good work that's been done, I think anyway, over the last 6.5 years.
I suppose it's one of these devil in the deep blue sea things. Is it better to have a situation where Australia, England, India might play a test against Zimbabwe, against Ireland, against these kind of teams, because they're willing to play 1 but they're not willing to play 3? Might that be something where more test cricket gets played overall or gets spread around more? But if you're talking about we need to have 1 test qualifying encounters, 1-night stands, because it's going to make it easier for certain teams to afford to play, it would also make it easier for certain teams to afford to play if they got a higher percentage of the ICC revenue rather than the big countries soaking it all up between themselves. So it's offering a solution for a very solvable problem that's solvable in other ways. They're just not the solutions that those in charge actually want.
So I mentioned that just 2 tests between India and South Africa, which feels a crying shame that the Saffers don't get a chance to beat them 3-0, given that's what New Zealand did last year. There was that unfortunate line from Conrad Shukri, the coach, who I looked at it in context, and it got a lot of coverage about him saying that they wanted to make India grovel. What he was really saying was, and he kind of picked himself up in saying it, he goes, to borrow a line, because of course the grovel term has so much historical loading, with Tony Gregg when talking about the West Indian team. But Conrad Shukri and Neil Manthorpe does a good job of explaining this, was sort of talking about keeping them out in the field and destroying them. And they were in a position in the game where that's exactly what their plan was, to make them get on their knees and wilt, and India ended up getting skittled for about 140 in the 4th innings of the match. That's precisely what happened there. So anyway, I know that that'll probably be something that Conrad Shukri has to carry around with him and explain away a couple of times, but thought it was worth just providing that context given the headlines that prompted during the week.
You wouldn't want to be a white South African coach saying that, put it that way. But,
No.
it's, there's the loading, the historical loading on it, where it probably wasn't intended as in a racial context by Tony Gregg either, but it was certainly interpreted that way. And fair enough, you have to be aware of the words you're saying and what they mean. So it was bullish to go to a phrase that has such a historical loading, but then maybe the fact that it has such a historical loading means that you can't say it without it being obvious that you're not being completely serious about it. I don't know. It's all a little bit complicated. One thing that has happened in India that I was logged onto, I love a Virat Kohli 100. I love another one added to the tally. I know the 100 is probably becoming a pipe dream given how little one-day cricket they'll play, but if he made it through to the next World Cup and if he got on a good tear, it's still not completely beyond the realms of possibility. Big 100 in the South Africa game, and especially good that there was a very funny part of facing a stack of deliveries coming up to the 100 where he didn't score much, and then afterwards unleashing again, blocking 4 balls from the spinner just before the 100. ... 4 balls from the same spinner after 100. 4, 6, 6, 4. So all of the Kohli hits were being played as he went on to 130 odd.
His 52nd one-day 100, which means that, of course, Tendulkar got 51 in Test cricket or one days. I always get confused about this. Test. But Tendulkar got 51 in one or the other. Test, right?
49 ODI, yeah.
49 one days.
Kohli broke the Tendulkar record a while ago with his 50th.
Quite right. Yes, he did in the World Cup semi. But my point is that there's nobody with more than 52 in any format than Kohli in the one-day form of the game. More power to him. Long may King Kohli reign on the one-day game. And I played cricket the other day, Jeff. Probably should have mentioned this in the intro, but I captained Endeavour Hills, my childhood team, and who I played a lot of seniors with until, I guess, I played as recently as 10 years ago for them. But I went and played a game in Baronia on Sunday, which was a great experience despite being in the freezing cold and 10 degrees and 5 rain delays and getting the covers on and off. Well, most of the young kids playing with me were Asian kids of about, let's say, average age was 15. It was a development side that I was overseeing in one of the senior grades in the ECA. And I asked them all, what form of the game do you like most? And to a kid, they all said Test cricket, and they all said they also like watching one-day cricket. So you don't discount the youth, and don't automatically assume that one-day cricket is irrelevant as it relates to T20 cricket. There are a lot of young people out there who love the game, who respect 50-over cricket and love Test cricket as well. I was buoyed by that. These dedicated young cricketers who are trying to make their way in the game.
Cricket's full of a lot of 55-year-old blokes saying kids don't want to watch this, they want to watch T20 cricket. Okay, how do you know?
We'll find out when the World Cup's on, I suppose. T20 World Cup is being played next year it's basically through February, goes to the 8th of March when there'll be the final in either Sri Lanka or at Ahmedabad, depending on what happens with India and Pakistan and all the rest, a formula that we're rather used to these days is odd as it is. Australia have got the draw where they're playing all of their group games in Sri Lanka, though. So I've already had a bit of correspondence from people saying, should we go on tour to Sri Lanka again? I'm like, I'm not up for it. I've done it 3 times in the last 10 years. However, I would encourage anyone to get on the World Cup Australian tour, as it were, because that'll be a great month or however long it is until they get out of the group stage, travelling around Sri Lanka and enjoying that part of the world.
Yeah, it's a wonderful country to tour if you ever get the opportunity. And, also it's great that it's slightly more than 2 months before the first game. It's the 2nd of December now. It doesn't start till the 7th of February. So we've had more than 2 months lead up from the BCCI to get the schedule out. That's unprecedented levels of organisation from them. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And great that we're kicking off with the grudge match. Match 1 in Colombo, Pakistan, Netherlands. Finally, Pakistan get the chance to stick one up the Dutch and settle that centuries of animosity between those two nations.
It's a pretty good format with 5 groups moving into a Super 8 stage, and within that, 2 teams qualify from each. So Australia have got Ireland, Oman, Sri Lanka, who are the host, of course, in that group, and Zimbabwe. I know there'll be a lot of interest in the Italy draw. They've got Bangladesh, England, Nepal, and the West Indies. So, it'll take a lot to get over England, Bangladesh, and West Indies full members. But from Italy's perspective, there's a there will be a chance to push Nepal if they play well. Acknowledging that Nepal, it's not their first rodeo either, is it? So that will be there'll be games that we watch closely. Like when England are playing Italy, I'll go to when that is for what it's worth. That's being played at Eden Gardens in Calcutta on the 16th of February. That will be an event. England, the oldest cricketing nation, playing Italy, the newcomer to World Cup. So we shit on the ICC a lot for good reason, but expanding this tournament to 20 teams is absolutely a good thing, and looking forward to seeing how Italy go on that front. Speaking of World Cups, the under-19 schedule is out. It's running from mid-Jan until early Feb, so just before the Men's T20 World Cup. Thankfully, Jeff, good news. It's going to remain a 50-over tournament. There was some chat that it might be relegated to the T20 format, but not to be. 41 matches, 16 teams, and that's across Zimbabwe and Namibia. So the ICC events company, if you like, will be in Africa. It'll move to South Asia, and that's where it will be through those months that follow the Australian summer. Jeff, I'm mindful we've got a bit more to get through. I wonder whether we should take a break and then have a brief segment 3. How's that sound to you?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, on the way to the break then, in that case, a reminder that you can stop snoring through the final word. I mean, it's not something we've said to you in the past. Until a couple of weeks ago, we'd never really talked about snoring on the show. The extent to which we've talked about good sleep, it was around Steve Smith taking sleeping tablets when he was captaining the Australian team in the Ashes 8 years ago. Well, put those sleeping tablets away. Well, I know these are different things, but you know what I'm trying to say. Have a great night's sleep, sleep refreshed, sleep better, strap it on your chin. Stick it on your chin. I'm doing it every night. And I love that. I actually like now the feeling of waking up and feeling the TENS machine on my chin. I did not wake up at all across 8 hours kip last night. And that is virtually unprecedented for me. It must be related. It has to be related. I'm looking forward to Rach getting out here in a couple of weeks and confirming the fact that I'm no longer snoring. But it's so easy to use. You put it on the charger, you stick it on your chin, you go to bed, you get the settings right, you wake up in the morning and you feel so better for it. A reminder that all of the clinical trials that the Zeus has enjoyed, all of the work across 15 years, all of the hard yakka to get to this point, which is why it's enjoying ridiculous success. So buy someone in your life one for Christmas. Gift it to yourself for Christmas. You can buy it anywhere across the world. Distribution, even it is a UK company, but distribution all over the place. So if you're listening in Australia, it is not an impediment for getting a Zeus to you. Jeff's bringing a bunch of them up to Brisbane with us. I'm not saying you can have any of them, but we're going to have them on deck to display when we're making the daily programs at the Gabba across the week ahead. And there's a 5% discount, TFW 2025, to get yourself sleeping better, sleeping refreshed. And I'm really pumped how well this is working, Jeff, because, I can now vouch for it personally. Mm-hmm. And it's nice when you're working with partners who you're using their product and it's working well.
And 5%'s a hefty discount, but the most important thing is if it doesn't work, you get your money back because, people have different causes of snoring. Some will not be treated by this. The most common one will. And so if you are one of the people who has that, you'll be able to test it out, see how it works, and there's no financial risk at all. Give it a go.
Give it a go.
In the show notes.
Stimulate your tongue. Stop yourself from snoring. That's how it works. Jeff, pause here. Back in a moment. We'll wrap up the show. This is the Final Word, Season 19, Episode 12. Jeff, the other bit of, I mentioned some schedules there around the world. The England domestic schedule has been released during the week. So this is quite interesting.
So
where
for this is nothing lights a fire in your eyes more than when some England domestic scheduling news comes out.
Yeah, it is true. It is true to say. We knew about a bit of how it was going to work next year, but now we've had it confirmed that they're going to be, from a county championship perspective, everyone will play 6 games in the first 7 weeks in that opening flurry, so 1 fewer than normal. Then there'll be a midsummer block where everybody plays 2 games in June, which is great. And then from August the 20th, so when the test matches basically start when England are playing Pakistan, that'll be the starter's pistol on a rapid run to the finish line, 6 championship rounds in a row to finish the season. Now, the PCA, the Professional Cricketers Association, the Players Union, aren't best pleased at having 6 games at the end, suggesting it'll create burnout. And I suppose time will tell, but the major case they're advancing isn't for distributing the games differently, but for scrapping rounds. And I mean, we've talked about this for a long time now about why any fewer than 14 rounds with the amount of rain that you get in England, and you combine that with the amount of time you have in the season, I think that's yeah, it'll continue to rattle around, but this will be interesting, having 6 games at the end rather than 4. And, I know that a lot of people want to see the county championship reduced, but I'm not one of them. And the counties aren't either. The counties voted against this only a few months ago. So the PCA, it's fair enough to keep banging the drum on behalf of their members, but it's only as recent as, 2 or 3 months ago when the counties themselves said, no, we're going to keep 14, we're not moving to 13.
Yes, and if you're talking about burnout, it's not compulsory for every player to play every game. You can. They have squads. There are other players available. You can, if they're talking about removing one round, well, players can rest for a round if they want to do that in that stretch and provide opportunities for others elsewhere. So it really doesn't seem like a huge deal. This is the way that county cricket's been played since time immemorial. Every look at any of the seasons we look at it, going back to the 1800s, you've got players probably playing in a less strenuous fashion, but playing much more densely populated than 6 games in 7 weeks would be a quiet patch for some of those previous seasons. So not to say that the way things were done in the past, it should always be the way it's done in the future. The other tournament I've been keeping an eye on this week, Adam, the Women's Big Bash League, mostly because it was Amanda Wellington's 150th game, and I love 150th milestone. I think maybe for matches, it's worth a little bat raise when you only get, what is it, 14 a year? Yeah, whatever it might be.
150 games that's a real thing. When I was really surprised and overjoyed. It suggests that Wello's barely missed a game in the history of the WBBL, and rightly so. She's been.
She certainly hasn't missed a season. She's played every season for the Strikers.
No. And
I don't recall her having much of a problem with injury over that time. She's certainly never been dropped. So,
not really. I mean, what a great person. Yes, we're very fond of Wello. Yes, that extends beyond watching her play. She's a great human being. And we've sort of tracked her career from the start. She was the first WBBL superstar, bowling Meg Lanning around her legs. There was 5 of us there to witness that in the press box, including Izzy, including Jesse Hogan, including I think Dan Cherney might have been there as well at the Junction Oval that day. Back before streaming, she was a star. She was the catalyst for the streaming. I remember pestering James Sutherland about this exact point, going, you've had a 16-year-old bowl Meg Lanning around her legs and no one could ever see it again. I remember attacking him about that at a press conference in Sydney in the first year we were covering the game. And look, obviously CA and James was a big part of this, have invested enormously in the technology around that. Now we've got to follow a great career very closely. I wish she'd played more for Australia. Maybe she will. She's got time on her side. She certainly's got the skills to do it, and she's highly sought after too. Hampshire have just signed Wello as their full-time pro for next season across the formats in Tier 1. So more power to her. The first player to 150 Big Bash games.
165 wickets at an average of less than 20. The only players ahead of her are Molly Strano and Jess Jonathan, and Jonathan's injured at the moment, so that lead might get whittled away. Molly Strano's having a fun season as well, mostly for the off-field stuff, getting picked up on camera with all of the ridiculous activity she's getting up to in the dugout. Some other bits and pieces. Jemima Rodriguez is out of the tournament for, it's a sort of personal reasons situation. She played 3 games, then she went back to India for Smriti Mandana's wedding, but then Smriti's dad has been taken ill, and so Jemima's sticking around to be supportive there, so she's not going to come back, won't have time to come back for the rest of the tournament, which is unfortunate. But it's an interesting one, Adam. So Hurricanes top of the table, which is nothing new in the last couple of years, where Tassie and Hobart teams have been very strong, but still over the history of the tournament, it still seems odd to see the Hurricanes up there with the Melbourne Stars second. They've been the absolute worst of the comp for so long, but they're going well this year, and the Renegades 4th, so 3 of the teams who struggled in quite a lot of the first few seasons. The Hurricanes have a real World 11 thing going on. There's not a single Tasmanian player anywhere near that side with their internationals, and then everybody else is from New South Wales or Heather Graham from WA, and on it goes. But yeah, they're winning stuff in purple, so I suppose that matters more than the provenance of players. Meg Lanning's still piling on the runs. I know it's unlikely, but I can't help having it tickle the question at the back of my mind that when you're just watching her smoke a ball over extra cover for 6 and you're thinking, wow, she's not that old. And she's had a bit of time off. Would she ever? Could she consider? Would an Australian team be worse?
Could
if
she?
Meg Lanning were back?
Maybe.
Would it? I don't think it would.
Well, the answer's no. She'd need to want to do it. She's been very open about the reason she stopped playing international cricket. And we wanted to interview her on the program and didn't quite get there during the not the KSL. Gee, that dates me. During the 100 this year. But we will try again. Maybe after the Big Bash, we'll try and get her on the show in that period after the Ashes is finished and before the T20 World Cup. We'll have a crack at getting Meg on the show and asking her, whether that window is even a little bit open. It would be interesting if it was an open-ended answer from her, because you can't. If you're her, what a great yarn it would be if she did come back. Improbable as it is, I don't want to speculate too much because it's almost certainly not going to happen. However, we'll ask the question.
Elise Perry, meanwhile, 77, red ink off 44 balls the other day, still doing it. But more importantly than that, your friend and mine, the great scorer Sarah Berman, who does wonderful work in New South Wales domestic cricket, saved the day, Adam. They had a no ball for height that was ruled in the over. They had the free hit. Perry was caught off both deliveries, trying to smack them into the deep. The umpires then got confused and miscounted the over, and Sarah had to get on the radio to the match referee.
Love that.
To go, because it was a close finish and the ball would have mattered. To go, hang on a minute, you've still got a ball to bowl in this over, which apparently scorers, it's sort of frowned upon. Traditionally, they don't do it. But in this context, and given the closeness of the game, they went, well, we should tell them. We should tell the umpires they're going to get this wrong if we don't get the info in. So everything was restored. Order was restored. The correct number of deliveries were bowled. And Sarah, you stood by your principles as a scorer.
Well done, Sarah Berman, who is one of the best and can't wait till she ends up representing her country as an international scorer at some point. It feels foretold that will happen at some stage. That's just about enough from us. I love that Will Basisto's been on Media Street as well, Jeff. Nice that his story is getting a wider airing and people are listening to us about the great Will Basisto of Caxi fame. There's a good piece on Cricket Australia about all of the Caxi players who have gone on to achieve higher honours, and Brendan Doggett's one of those, and Jake Weatherall's another. But a reminder, who was their captain all along? It was Will Basisto, and he's been busy of late, as we talked about last week. A reminder as we walk out the door today that Stomping Ground beers going beautifully. Get yourself a case of it. $5 goes to charity. Random draw number 2, which, Jeff, we are duty bound to do today, which I have failed to do today. So we'll do 2 of them on story time. How's that sound? This is thinking on my feet. We will do 2 cases of beer on story time this week. And that will be done at random once we've updated the random number generator. In other words, once Tubes has updated the spreadsheet. If you are a new patron, if you are a patron who is up to your pledge, you will go in the draw to win the Final Word beer. And if you're not and you just want to buy it, and why wouldn't you? The Final Word beer is there now. The link's in the show notes. It'll be delivered, or you can pick it up from the 15th of December, right in time for Christmas. And as I said before, $5 of it going to charity to help young kids have access to sports. So you're doing something good. In addition to buying a beer that, Jeff, you have personally had a hand in, the type of Stomping Ground beer that we've got coming out in this limited edition run, which has gone so well so far.
Yes, it's a mid. It's not a mid-strength technically. It's a bit stronger than that, but it's what they call a sessionable pale ale, as in it's not a lunatic soup. You're not going to be falling down the stairs after 3 of them. You'll be in reasonable shape and still able to turn the arm over in backyard cricket and not injure yourself. So, yeah, all of that ahead. Stay tuned. Listen into story time throughout the summer, because that's where most of the drawing will be done.
Excellent. Yes, and I will show my boots to the screen again with Big Boots UK. That link's in the show notes for 10% off. But when we're at Brisbane, you and me together, all dressed up for the second test match of this series, beginning on Thursday. Tomorrow we'll have the preview show. Thank you to Emma John. Thank you to Zeus Sleeps. Check out the discount code for them. Thank you to Morris Blackburn Lawyers for being our principal partner. Thank you to every single person out there who's a patron of ours, who's got in touch, wanted to talk about the book or the T-shirt or the beers. I know we're really busy at the moment, but it's the definition of peak season. So thank you to everybody. We've got our Final Word cricket game on the 14th of December in Melbourne. The team has been picked. We're locked and loaded for that against the Reds, and that'll be the next opportunity for us all to come together.
Come on down.
For now,
Edinburgh Gardens.
All that's left is to say, It is. It's at Edinburgh Gardens at the at the Brunswick Street Oval, Edinburgh Cricket Club. You can't miss it. The old grandstand there. We're playing against the Reds, and I'm not saying we'll have any of the Final Word beer there because that comes out the next day. However, we will make sure that we have some stomping ground as part of it, and on the night we'll go. It's going to be a great day, as it was at Paddy's at the Commercial Club last week with the book. So whether it's the book, the beer, the T-shirts, the boots, the anti-snoring device, you've got us all covered here at the Final Word when it comes to Christmas coming up later in the month, and all of the programming that will be coming to you from Brisbane starting from tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We love you all. See you soon.